too far away.
Hey there, it's 3 o'clock on a Tuesday. We all know what that means. Another riveting episode of Behind Breaking Bond. Thank you so much for joining us. You obviously care about this issue. That's why you are watching this live stream. Joining me is...
Hey, Andy Kahn, Crime Stoppers, and I'd like to thank our guest for bringing me assorted saltwater taffy from Buc-ee's. Does anybody ever bring you anything?
No!
I mean, I get all these great
Everybody
things.
likes you.
You know,
Yeah.
look at this.
Everything from Buc-ee's is good. I would live in Buc-ee's
Right.
if
Oh,
I
I
could.
know. I can't go into Buc-ee's. I'm basically a walking progressive commercial. I walk around by live, laugh, love. Like
All that
posters,
stuff,
all that
right?
stuff.
Introduce yourself, Emily.
Emily DeToto, criminal defense attorney here in Houston. I've been practicing for 27 years. And I'm happy to be here.
And you know your stuff.
I do know my stuff.
27 years.
I know.
I was 3.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
she
How
was
long
a
have you been
child.
a reporter?
I've been with Fox 26 for 32 years.
Wow.
Okay.
Longer than you've been?
Right.
Yeah. I'm obviously much older than you.
Barely.
Man, there's a lot of seasoned people
I
here.
tell you.
So,
Let's talk about, everyone will probably remember this story. It was a big story when it broke a couple of weeks ago. There's a woman, Raymond, what was her name? Nutru. 44-year-old Nutru, single mother of 3. She had gotten like over $4,000 to, I think she was going to take a trip back to Vietnam. And she's followed allegedly by this 17-year-old James Harrell and a female accomplice, follows her like 23 miles from an ATM. She's over on Bel Air, I think the 6800 block of Bel Air, getting ready to go into a store or something, and he takes her stuff. Well, he doesn't get the money. So he allegedly comes back and body slams her. I mean, it was a terrible thing to see, wasn't it?
I'll just quote Mayor Turner right here on a Fox News broadcast regarding this incident. And it just slammed her down like she was a bag of potatoes. When I saw this, it made me mad as hell.
I was at that press conference, and you could just tell on his face, he was very upset. And I think everybody, that when you first see it, you're like, what? I mean, how could somebody be that cruel? How could something like that happen?
Well, I will admit I have not seen the video. I was out of town last week, and was it last week or?
A couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, it was a couple of
Right.
weeks ago.
Yeah.
And so then,
You should watch Fox News.
you should.
That's true.
That would
Well,
help.
it airs at 9. That's way past.
Is that too late for you? So James Harrell is charged in the case, and his female accomplice, I can't remember her name. Anyway, you take it from there.
So he's charged with aggravated robbery and aggravated assault. And evidently, he has a juvenile record. I mean, he was taken into custody. Charged.
Well, and also too, I think he was out on
Yes, he was out on a general order bond for unlawfully carrying a weapon, a gun. And not only that, but the judge that signed off on the bond was an associate judge who was given a special docket. He was defeated in the primary. David Singer was a misdemeanor court judge, and he was assigned to like domestic violence, one of the associate judge's special dockets. And
Right.
we're going, well, this isn't domestic violence, but whatever reasons was, he's the one that signed off on the general order. So he's already out on bond for carrying a gun. He's 17 years old. So now he gets, sent to big boy court. So he's charged with the ag robbery and the ag assault, and he gets a bond for $200,000. Okay, that's reasonable, I would think, considering this case has been plastered not just locally, not just statewide, but internationally.
Oh yeah,
Wow.
I think
It was all
anybody that sees that, you think this is a dangerous person that needs to be.
Well,
locked
someone
up.
that follows somebody,
23
you're
miles.
casing
Yeah.
them, right?
Right.
I mean, you're casing this. This was not some random,
Right, that's intent.
spur of the moment.
Well, and
right?
you know what's strange too? It's like somehow he apparently knew that she had stuff in her hand, and he kind of pushes her or pushes the stuff out of her hand. She drops stuff, and he's running off, and he realizes that he doesn't have the money because he comes back, and that's when he picks her up and throws her to the ground.
Wow.
This is in the middle of the day.
That's what I
Yeah,
was gonna ask you, is this
It's the middle
daytime,
of the day,
Oh, yeah.
nighttime, in the middle of the day. So, all right, so he's in court, he's charged, and he gets a bond, and it was reasonable. I certainly think it wasn't exorbitant amount. It wasn't like it was $1 million, you know.
Right.
Right,
It was, I would say, considering the heinous nature of this crime.
you'd have to come up with what, 20 grand for a $200,000 bond.
Correct. And then all of a sudden, it gets cut in half. And we're like, why would you cut a bond in half for something of this? There's no, mitigating factors,
Right.
period. Why would somebody cut a bond?
well, where was it cut? Was it cut in front of the district court where the case is pending? Was it cut before he made his first court appearance?
I think it was in the 183rd,
It
right?
was actually because the judge of the 183rd actually did sign
Right,
the bond reduction. I think that's pretty well been very well established
right,
that the new judge of this court signed off on.
Kristen Guinea, the new
Yeah,
judge in the
so-
183rd.
We
Well-
couldn't figure that, why you would do that. And then to make matters even more worse, all of a sudden there's jailhouse tape. You gotta love jailhouse
Right.
tapes. And if you as a defense attorney, I'm sure it's like rule 101.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever
Be
you're
careful what
taught,
you, yes.
you know, and it clearly states, right? What does it state
Right.
when you're making phone calls?
They're being recorded.
Yeah, everybody knows it. I mean, everybody
Right.
knows that.
You're being recorded. So this guy, I'm assuming he knew he was being recorded. And if not, then, you need an iChart or something like that.
Right,
So in the conversation that he has with his alleged mother, and that's who we presume it to be, he's basically confessing to what he did. I did something really, bad. I did this. And so we're listening to this, and then he starts blasting the victim
Yeah.
in this case. He starts taking her to task for having a GoFundMe, because keep in mind, her medical, this was the sole breadwinner.
Mhm.
3
This is a
kids.
single mother
Yeah.
right,
of 3 kids. None of them are old enough to work.
And there's been a huge outpouring of support for her. I
Right.
mean, and rightfully so. In Houston, you know how people are. They really want to help when they
Right.
see somebody struggling.
right,
And people really came to help
It
her.
galvanized the entire community.
It
of
did,
Paris.
yeah.
Everyone was just appalled. People were offering to pay her rent. They were offering to provide her food, medical. I got something from a medical company wanting to help her with her recovery basis as well. So
well, I guess to answer your question, first of all, in my personal opinion, that bond was way too high.
A $200,000
$200,000
bond.
bond for those degrees of felonies, I believe those are extremely high. I've known Kristen Guinea for years. I believe her to be a very fair judge. She was one of the judges that we missed the most when she got swept out. She was one of the judges we welcomed back, and we're so happy to have back.
And she's a Republican.
She's
Kind
a-
of explain to everybody kind of how her
So,
path.
she was a prosecutor, and then she ran for office. She was elected, and then she got swept out, and then she ran this last cycle and was elected again. This was a weird cycle in that many Republicans lost, but it seems like the women who ran against male judges, Republican women that ran against male judges won. Not all of them, but she was one of them.
But she's obviously one of the few
Right.
Republican
right, judges. And
criminal
she's
district court
She's
judges.
been extremely fair. She's been tough. I mean, but in my opinion, having done this as long as I said, that bond, I would have asked for that bond to be cut in half, if not more.
Yeah, and his attorney, I guess, could have done that, right? I mean, it could have been his attorney that said, "Hey, that's too high."
well, I mean, you can say anything you want. I mean,
Right.
you're the judge. That's where the buck stops.
Yeah.
You
Right.
make that decision one way or the other. I would think in this particular case, and I would beg to differ with you on
Mhm.
that because of the public safety aspect. Do I believe this defendant is a clear threat to public safety? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Anybody that does that and follows in body in the middle of the day
Right.
and also had a gun on him
Before
a couple
that.
months ago, and I don't know what his juvie record is, but I do know there's a juvenile record.
Right.
I can only
He's
imagine.
he's not a
It
big
is.
kid. I mean, he's 17. He's not big, and she's kind of a tiny woman.
Right.
Again, I think the thing that really made it take off was the video,
Right.
because it's so hard to see that.
Right.
Well, and then on social media, it all kind of turned political again, because you and I have both said many, many times, it has nothing to do with a Democrat or a Republican.
Right.
Well, here you have a Republican judge that lowered the bond. She cut the $200,000 bond in half. She can do that. Well, then it goes on social media. And Gene Wu, who's taken a few shots at me before, I know, I'm shocked.
He's a state rep?
Yes.
Okay.
And thank you. And he, where's Fox News and Randy Wilson hitting on judges, but he doesn't say anything about when this happens
Yeah, he
with a
dissed you.
Republican judge.
Kissed you.
Every single station in town, including mine, did a story. You can go on our website and you'll find it. We did a story saying that the judge cut the bond in half.
Yeah,
No,
I know. And I was like, man, he's dissing you, but he's not saying anything about me. So
Right.
He likes you.
I'm telling you, I felt like royalty. man.
See, here we go
Man.
again. People bring you candy.
Right.
They don't say bad stuff about
So
it.
were they each set at 100,000?
I don't. What was hers?
Because
Do
those
you
are two
remember?
separate
Hers is like
$100,000
40.
bonds.
Yeah,
which
she-
is-
Yeah, the woman that drove off. with
She was sort of the
50.
driver.
No, what I mean is he's charged with aggravated assault and aggravated robbery. So
Yeah.
those are two separate felonies.
Yes.
Were
Right.
each so for this individual you're speaking of, were each of his bonds set at 100,000 per case?
He was charged with just aggravated robbery with serious bodily.
Okay.
Yeah, there's
So-
just one
Right,
charge.
so
Yeah.
$200,000 in my experience is way too high.
That is a high bond.
Well,
Yeah.
hold on, he was also charged with an aggravated assault with a deadly weapon in an unrelated case.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah, I'm glad you remember that. Yeah.
Now, actually, I read the Fox News report, and if you're listening, State Representative, this was actually on Fox News.
And the sad thing is that might have been the story.
So what does
Yeah.
that mean in unrelated case? There's
Well,
no-
Not related to. the-
Yeah.
I know,
Right,
right.
Another case.
It was two.
Right, two separate, right, because I believe a week before he was also implicated in another so-called jugging.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So there,
So-
yeah, I'm glad you remembered that.
So they're
Wow, I
each
just
set at
read it.
100,
Yes.
So-
Yes.
unless he comes up with another, I guess it's 20,000. Sometimes judges set bonds. So I've had clients charged with murders and the judge will set the bond at $1 million.
Yeah.
She'll then lower it to 500,000 just to show that there's movement, maybe to make me look good so I don't get yelled at by the family all the
Yeah.
time. Maybe thinking that they won't be able to make it, but sometimes they do. I've had several.
Back
clients
in the
make $1 million
day,
bonds.
before I worked in TV, I was a radio reporter here.
Mhm.
And I covered the police beat. And the bond for murder, like unless you had some, crazy criminal past,
Right.
was $10,000.
Wow.
That was this kind of standard
Right.
bond
Right.
that you had for murder. Do you
When I
remember
was a
that?
DA, it was around 30,000.
Yeah, I remember the 30,000, standard minimum bond for murder, and then it kept getting a little bit higher as well. But again, and I believe that defendants who had no prior criminal history, who met certain specifications, they would get that
Right.
minimum bond.
Yeah.
Of course, if you had, a rap sheet or whatever, the
Right.
bond
Right.
would go higher.
Well, and a lot of it too, doesn't it kind of depend on what's your likelihood of taking off, right? I mean,
Absconding, public safety, it's
Yeah.
likely to return, public safety. I mean, bonds are made so that people will return to court.
right,
They're not supposed to be punitive in nature. You're not supposed to be convicted before you're convicted.
Right.
You're not supposed to be on probation before you've been convicted.
right,
That's not what
But-
bonds are for,
right. But you do have to adhere to,
the bond conditions.
Right.
And so that's,
here's what I'm going to ask you, this defense attorney. So have you ever had a client whose recordings, or where he
Oh, God.
actually admits stuff in phone recordings that are then played for the entire world to hear?
thank God, no. I mean, rule 10101 is you tell your clients that, well, the calls are being recorded. Don't make my job any harder. Talk about the news, talk about the Astros, talk about the weather,
yeah,
but don't talk about your case.
right,
But with that said, I have had cases where they were, strong on the defense side, weak on the prosecutorial side, and they get tanked because my client would write a letter to his co-defendant, and all the letters are read and copied.
Yeah.
And it just basically spelled out the evidence that was missing on the prosecution side. So a strong defense case turns into a strong prosecutorial case because the defendant wrote something down.
When you hear about people that they'll be in jail and they'll talk to other
Right,
inmates, and then all of a sudden
Jailhouse
there's,
snitches. Yeah.
Snitches. But
yeah,
this
I
is
mean,
actually
you probably
recorded.
right.
tell your clients, just don't
Right.
talk about
to
your
anyone.
case to anyone
Yeah,
at all.
Because if you and I mean, if two people are in jail and someone comes to you, you will say or do anything to lower your time, to get out of trouble.
Sure.
You know, you're not going to incriminate yourself. You're going to, throw the other guy under the bus. That's just logic.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, but then again, jailhouse snitches are inherently unreliable.
Right.
Because hello, they're not talking in a library. They're not having a conversation at the church breakfast.
Right.
They're in jail.
Yeah.
And then what's that guy in jail for? You know what I mean? So.
Yeah.
they're
I mean, you're
inherently
talking about
unreliable.
people having a conversation. They all have a credibility issue.
Right, exactly, from the get-go.
Yeah.
Right. And then they're not gonna talk unless they get incentivized to do so.
Right.
So
Yes.
they're not gonna just run, well, they can't run to the DA's office, but they're not gonna just spill the beans unless
They're going
they
to get something out of it.
too. And then that in of itself, on top of them already being in jail, makes their testimony
So this
unreliable.
this is what part of the recorded conversation.
Mhm.
And this is what they have recorded, is I snatched a purse. And basically when I snatched a purse, the lady ran away with the money. I grabbed her, slammed her, and she's paralyzed. Correct me if I'm wrong, that's admissible, right?
That is admissible, yes.
Yeah.
So would you say that he kind of admitted?
Well, how are you not gonna admit it when it's on video?
Right. Well, on
That's
tape.
just,
Yeah.
yeah, that's just icing on the cake.
Yeah.
He
But-
could claim self-defense.
How
Right.
hard would it be to get that thrown out?
He doesn't have the reasonable expectation of privacy in jail. If
Right.
he's warned that all of his
Yeah.
phone calls are being recorded,
Yes.
there's, I don't see any way that it would be thrown out unless the recording was somehow unreliable, which I'm sure it's not.
Right.
But to play devil's advocate, if Andy, what you said was true, that he was talking to his mother and confessing to his mother, if some smart
We don't
defense,
know, yeah.
some smart defense attorney out there could say that he was expressing remorse
Yeah.
from the get-go, who's the person you rely on the most? Your mom.
Sure.
That he feels so bad about it. Mom, I did this. Mom, I did that.
Yeah.
Now that can only go so far up until the second part that Andy talked about, which is when he starts, and I won't use the word slam. That's not,
He was
He was
dissing the
shame-
victim.
yeah, dissing the victim.
Blasting her because they had a GoFundMe account.
Yeah.
right. That's when he
paying
loses
for,
the
right, he
remorse
was saying
card.
she's
Right,
making
yeah.
money.
Right.
Look at all the money she's making
Right.
because of this.
Yeah.
And-
That's where he
It's like
loses the remorse card.
he's mad at her. He's
Right.
angry at her
Right.
in the conversation, isn't he?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's just, damning her to hell.
Yeah.
Basically for daring to have, ask for, and she didn't ask for it. The public is the one that came and
Right.
wanted to help her. And God bless the people of Harris County.
Yeah, a lot of folks.
Right.
But again, I think that
He took issue with the GoFundMe, and he said, "Man, you've already made this amount. She's going to be back walking in a year." So his attorney, and I know his attorney, another former judge, Catherine Evans,
Mhm.
who was appointed, said that the release of the jailhouse calls is unethical. Is it?
I
Or-
believe it's definitely prejudicial. And Judge Evans is another excellent criminal defense. She was an excellent judge. She knows her stuff. She's become an excellent criminal defense attorney. I don't see any reason that they would have released those tapes other than to prejudice,
how did
I would
it
agree with you on
how
that.
did
What was
it
the purpose
become
of-
public?
just to
Right.
prejudice the case.
How
Do
does
you know?
I don't know. How does
I do
something
not
like
know
that?
I have no idea.
I mean,
those-
somebody, probably.
A TV station had it, not my TV station, but another station in town had it. Now I don't know how they
You
got
get
it.
stuff leaked to you, right?
Yeah, but you know what? Do you know what it sounded like to me? It sounded to me like whoever was talking on the other end recorded it. Why would the jail give it up?
Well, first of all, in my experience, we're not given jail calls until almost towards the very end of the case because
Right.
they want them to keep talking. Because if
Good
they
point.
give them up on day one, they're going to shut up.
Right.
So I don't get jail calls up until pretty late in the game.
Yeah.
So you might have a point there that whoever he was talking to.
And wouldn't you have to kind of know about, okay, like let's say you work in the jail.
Right.
You're not, I mean, unless you were standing there hearing it,
Right.
how would somebody in the jail
Right.
have knowledge of what an inmate is saying?
Right. Well, I think that Judge Evans has a really good point, and it might be worth grieving the jail over. I don't know what the remedy would be, but I certainly, in my experience, have never had that happen.
Right. It's
Even with
just
letters.
because
like
it's
I talked
not,
about.
is it clear to you how it came to be?
The only thing I would say is somebody, whoever was listening to that conversation, when they heard it, like slot machines went up, bing, 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 this is
Right.
gold.
Yeah.
Right?
So I don't.
This is gold, and who am I gonna let, I gotta let somebody know this.
Right.
Right.
Well, it
Some-
couldn't have been his mom then.
No, had to be somebody within. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Well, I mean, his attorney will definitely get to the bottom of it.
Yeah.
But then again, that's the risk you take when you make calls like that. That's why when I receive text messages from purported clients, I can't just take that they say they're Joe Blow at face value
Right.
and then start spilling the beans about the evidence and whatever. 'Cause
Sure.
you never know who's on the other end.
Right.
And it holds true here. I mean, he needs to stop talking
So
like
based
yesterday.
on
Yeah.
all this now, so now we all know this. This was after the bond was reduced.
Right.
So now you're the judge, and obviously you're well aware
Right.
of this. You can't not be. You would have to be made aware of this leaked conversation with the admission, the victim blaming, and all that stuff. Couldn't you, as a judge, say, you know what, Mr. Defendant, when I reduced your bond, I was not, privy to this.
Mhm.
Right.
I can go. Couldn't you go back and reinstate?
Or raise it.
I
Or-
don't see any legal basis for a judge to sua sponte, legal word of the day, on their own accord, to sua sponte raise.
That's a cool word.
I
I
know.
know.
I went to law school for that.
You did.
I paid a lot of money.
Yeah, it would have to
Can
be,
you highlight
Well,
that?
first of
word?
all-
it'd have to be either the prosecutor or the defense.
Right.
Word of the day.
Right. Well, first of all, if that could possibly subject any judge to a motion to recuse, because they're making decisions based upon what we call extrajudicial information, which is information they learned not within the four walls of the courtroom,
Right.
but outside of the courtroom.
Yeah.
And we all see things on the
And
news.
couldn't you make the argument too, that if the judge if she decided she was going to do that on her own, couldn't you say, well, she's
judge-
showing a bias. She's
Right,
already,
that's the motion
she's
to
already
recuse.
showing that she doesn't like this particular
Right.
defendant. She thinks he did
Right.
it.
Right.
And so she's punishing him
Right.
through,
Could
The
the
bar.
For
district
his freedom of
attorney's
speech.
office, could they make?
They could
Right.
move for a bond reconsideration
yeah.
and, use his admissions. But then again, I mean, it would have to come through the DA's office. That I don't see this
I
judge.
agree.
Yeah.
You know.
I can see that. That's a valid point.
Yeah.
Because what if, someone sees something on the news, is cases wear on and evidence comes out, and then everyone, judges haul defendants back into court and say, you know what, I read this article or I saw this story and I've decided I'm going to raise your bond. That's recusal right there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There's no way you could do that.
Right.
And again, I mean, I'm familiar with Judge Kristen Guiney's name because she's been down there for a while. Not saying that she made a bad decision, a good decision, not saying anything at all about that.
Right.
The whole reason for bringing it up is this, we go back to, even though the election is over, we go back to this whole Republican Democrat
Right.
thing, which should not matter when you're talking about a judicial decision or a court action. That shouldn't play
Right.
a part in it at all.
Right. Justice is blind. It doesn't matter who's presiding. You take each person as they come in and you judge it based on the facts, not upon your party.
Right.
Who elected you,
Yes.
so.
And while we're on bonds, talk about
Yes, so
what
we have-
happened today.
So today, the Senate passed Senate Bill 1151 out of the Senate. Evidently, there was 27-3. I'm dying to see who the three people that voted against mandating a minimum of 10% bond.
Yeah, and that would be
For
statewide.
violent offenders.
Yeah,
And as
yeah.
we found out in Harris County, there were, a few bond companies that were cutting deals.
Yeah.
Right.
And
And
who
that
knows? I mean,
undermines the judge's authority, wouldn't you say?
right.
Well, I mean, to be honest, it's a competitive market here in Harris County
Yeah.
for bonding companies. So I can see why some bonding companies are going to, give better deals than others.
Well, think about it. With the whole, the reform, the misdemeanor bond reform, where, it's pretty much PR bond for everybody.
Right.
That really hurt
Oh, yeah,
them.
that
They
put a lot of
lost half
people.
their business.
Yeah.
Right, the
Exactly.
O'Donnell decision,
Yes.
basically entire misdemeanor for the most part.
Right. Well,
They're gone.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we all know, we have maybe on speed dial about 4 or 5 bonding companies, and we say, hey, if this one doesn't work out, maybe this guy can cut you a better deal,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I mean, it's a business.
It is a
It's an
business.
honest business. There's
Right.
nothing illegal or immoral about running a
Not at
bail
all.
bonding company. I mean, it's just,
But I think
part of the
everybody
system.
should be on the same page.
Yes.
And when I went up and testified at the Senate committee, I basically said, as a board member, parents of murdered children and surviving family members of homicide, I always felt comfortable telling families when a person was taken into custody for the murder of one of their loved ones, and let's say the bond was $200,000, I felt comfortable telling them that means they have to come up with
Right.
$20,000.
Right.
But because we found out that some of them were cutting deals,
Right,
I couldn't honestly say that
Right.
Yeah.
anymore because of that.
right, because it wasn't accurate information.
right.
Right.
And that's why I felt this was kind of important.
Right,
Just everybody's on the same level playing field, everybody.
Yeah.
Period. And when a judge issues a bond, they were also of the assumption that it had to
Right.
be 10%.
Yeah.
Right.
They were surprised.
right. Well, they're making their decision based upon that belief.
Right.
And if in fact they set a bond thinking that that is the case and it's not, they're making a decision based upon bad information. And maybe that would have influenced them to set the bond higher.
I
Right.
don't see any downside in just having everybody
Uniformity.
Yeah.
on
Like
the same
across the
page.
state.
I don't see any. So now it goes to the House.
Yeah.
Right.
So we'll see what happens in the House, but I'm hoping that it ends up in the governor's hands and he signs off on the bill.
And the thing too, this is my thing with, it's not always the amount. What it comes down to is if you're out on bond, you have certain conditions of
Right.
bond and you need to follow them.
Right.
Well, on tonight's Breaking Bond, we're going to introduce you to a young man who violated the conditions of his
And that was
bond
actually proven in a bond revocation hearing.
hundreds of times.
More than that,
Yes, maybe thousands, right?
over 1,000.
Yeah.
Right here.
And what does he get? He gets rewarded by getting a lower bond. I kid you not.
I'm dying.
Am I
I'm dying to
kidding?
find out.
Isn't
Yes.
that a great tease?
It
Yes.
really is.
I know. So you'll have to stay up
I'm
to
gonna have to
actually
stay
watch this. Because you might actually be on this.
That's right. We're going to put you on it.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so please be sure to watch tonight's Breaking Bond on Fox 26 News at 9. Thank you so much for watching the live stream. And hey, be nice to yourself and everyone else.
Don't smoke these.
No, don't.
Go Astros.
Go Kings.
Yeah, go Stros.
Yeah.
Yes.
See, look, here.
Read that.
I'm dying.
Bye.
Bye.